in the sleepy town of Baraboo, Wisconsin, where summer nights whispered of innocence and community. No one could have imagined that a local teenager was hiding a monstrous obsession, one that involved the sickening snap of human bones. But on a warm July evening in 1995, 13-year-old Thad Phillips would come face to face with this nightmare, enduring nearly 2 days of unimaginable torment before his courage cracked the case wide open, exposing a killer who had already claimed at least one young life. This is the chilling true story of survival against the Bonebreaker Killer, and how one boy's unbreakable spirit brought justice to a community haunted by evil. Welcome to Dark Case Desk, where we delve into the darkest corners of true crime. It all began in the heart of summer, 1994, in the rural charm of Baraboo, a place known more for its circus history and rolling farmlands than for the shadows that lurked in its quiet neighborhoods. The 4th of July celebrations had wrapped up with fireworks lighting the sky, families gathering for barbecues, and children running free under the stars. In one modest home, 14-year-old Christian Steiner, or Chris as everyone called him, decided to turn in early that night. He was a typical kid, energetic, perhaps a bit adventurous, with a life full of promise ahead. Around 10 o'clock in the evening, his father peeked into his room, seeing him peacefully asleep in his bed, the soft rhythm of his breathing a comforting sound in the still house. But the next morning, Chris was gone. His parents, Connie and Donald, no, wait, those were Thad's parents later on. Chris's parents were different, a hardworking couple in the tight-knit community, woke to an empty room and a gnawing worry that something was terribly wrong. They searched the house, calling his name, but there was no response. The patio door, which they always locked before bed, stood slightly ajar, a silent clue that sent chills down their spines. At first, they hoped it was just teenage mischief. Maybe he had snuck out to meet friends, extending the holiday fun into the night. But as the hours ticked by without a sign of him, panic set in. They contacted the local police, their voices trembling as they described their missing son. The officers arrived quickly, treating it initially as a possible runaway case, common enough in small towns during summer breaks. But a seasoned detective, scanning the scene with a trained eye, noticed details that painted a darker picture. The screen on Chris's bedroom window had been carefully cut, the edges frayed as if sliced with a knife. Muddy footprints trailed through the house and out into the yard, the imprints larger than what Chris's shoes would leave, size 10 or 11 perhaps, belonging to an intruder. These weren't the marks of a boy slipping out for adventure. They screamed of foul play, an abduction in the dead of night. The community rallied, posters with Chris's smiling face plastered on telephone poles and store windows, volunteers combing the woods and riverbanks. Whispers spread through Baraboo. Had he wandered off? Was it a stranger or someone closer to home? Days blurred into an agonizing wait until the 10th of July, when a fisherman's routine outing turned horrific. Along the banks of the Baraboo River, a body floated partially submerged, bloated and decomposed from the warm waters. The recovery team pulled it ashore, the stench of decay hanging heavy in the air. It was Chris, his young features barely recognizable after days in the river. The pathologist examined the remains meticulously, noting the advanced state of decomposition that made some details hard to discern. He ruled the cause of death as drowning, but the manner, accidental, suicide, or homicide, remained undetermined at first. Bruises and fractures hinted at trauma, but the water had washed away much evidence. Still, the initial signs from the house pointed to abduction, sparking a full investigation. Baraboo, with its population of around 10,000, was thrust into fear. Parents locked doors tighter, kept children indoors after dark. Who could do this to a boy like Chris? As detectives canvassed the neighborhood, rumors swirled. One name surfaced repeatedly in hushed conversations: Joseph Clark, a 17-year-old local with a reputation for trouble. Joe, as he was known, was a burly teen, standing over 6 feet tall with a brooding presence that intimidated his peers. He had a history of petty crimes, bullying younger kids, skipping school, minor thefts, but nothing that screamed killer. Neighbors recalled him as odd, sometimes seen wandering alone at night, his eyes distant. Chris's parents, desperate for answers, heard the whispers and pressed the police. Had Joe been seen near their home? Did he know Chris? Investigators brought Joe in for questioning, his demeanor calm but evasive. He denied any involvement, claiming he was at a party that night. Alibis checked out loosely, friends vouched for him, though details were fuzzy. Hearsay piled up. Someone said Joe bragged about teaching a lesson to a kid. Another claimed he joked about the river. But it was all second-hand, no direct links. Detectives searched his home, a rundown place on the edge of town where he lived with his family, but found nothing incriminating. No bloody clothes, no weapons, no signs of struggle. Leads dried up, the case file growing cold as months passed without breakthroughs. Baraboo tried to heal, but the shadow of an unsolved death lingered, a reminder that evil could hide in plain sight. Then, just over a year later, in the summer of 1995, another family arrived in Baraboo, unaware of the darkness that had preceded them. Connie and Donald Phillips, along with their children, including 13-year-old Thad, had relocated from nearby, seeking a fresh start in the quaint town. Thad was a bright, outgoing boy, excited about new friends and school. He had just started classes a week earlier, navigating the hallways with the awkward charm of a teen on the cusp of adolescence. On the 28th of July, the family settled in for a cozy evening, watching a movie after dinner. Thad, eyelids heavy, dozed off on the couch, the flicker of the screen lulling him to sleep. In the quiet hours of the night, Thad felt himself being lifted, strong arms carrying him through the den. Groggy, he assumed it was his father, a familiar routine from nights when he fell asleep early. But as consciousness flickered, something felt off, the grip too tight, the steps too hurried. His eyes cracked open to unfamiliar surroundings. Outside, in front of a neighbor's house half a mile away. The figure dropped him roughly on the ground, a tall shadow looming. "Come inside," the voice commanded, low and insistent. Confused and scared, Thad followed, his mind racing. Who was this? Why was he here? Inside the dimly lit house, Thad got his first clear look at his abductor, a teenager, maybe 17 or 18, broad-shouldered and imposing. The boy introduced himself casually, chatting about models, baseball cards, and football, topics Thad loved. They sat on the bed upstairs, the conversation light at first, easing Thad's nerves. Maybe this was a prank or a friend of his brother's. But in an instant, the mood shattered. The teen's face twisted with rage, eyes wild. He grabbed Thad, pinning him down, ignoring the kicks and screams. Seizing Thad's right foot, he twisted viciously, the crack of bone echoing like a gunshot. Pain exploded through Thad's body, shock freezing him in place. The abductor stepped back, hands to his face, mumbling incoherently. Seizing the distraction, Thad bolted, hobbling down the stairs on his shattered ankle. He made it to the kitchen before arms wrapped around him, dragging him back. The torment escalated, the teen snapping Thad's right femur and hip, waves of agony crashing over him until blackness took hold. When Thad awoke, the abductor sat calmly beside him, chatting as if nothing happened. He confessed a fascination with bones, the sound of them breaking, the power it gave him. He urged Thad to sleep on the couch, but rest was impossible. Thad scanned the room desperately, piles of trash, dirty clothes, no weapons in sight. Pain throbbed, his body trembling, fear keeping him awake through the endless night. Dawn brought no relief. Thad asked to call his parents. The teen handed him the phone, smirking. Dialing frantically, Thad heard only silence. The cord had been cut. A cruel joke. Desperate, Thad shifted tactics, befriending his captor, talking about shared interests to stall. It worked briefly. They watched TV in the living room. But the enraged stare returned. Carried upstairs, Thad endured another assault, this time on his left leg. The snap, the searing pain. Adrenaline surged. Thad punched back, only to have a pillow pressed over his face, a threat of breaking his neck or back. He submitted, survival his only focus. The abductor's personality flipped again, now obsessed with fixing what he'd broken. He gathered elastic bandages and a drawer full of pristine white socks, wrapping Thad's legs meticulously, adding hospital braces. It was childlike, almost playful but twisted, the joy in repair only to destroy again. As evening approached, the teen announced he'd be going out. Before leaving, he inflicted more damage, ensuring Thad couldn't escape. Alone, Thad's resolve hardened. He wouldn't die here. Crawling off the bed, he dragged himself to the stairs, the pain unbearable. Sliding down legs first failed, he threw himself down, tumbling in agony. Inch by inch, he pulled toward the kitchen, passing out repeatedly. Hours passed in this hellish crawl. Finally nearing the doorway, footsteps sounded, the abductor returning with a girlfriend. Thad froze, listening to their murmurs, kisses. She left. The teen entered, eyes bulging at the sight. Fury unleashed, but Thad survived the night. Meanwhile, Thad's parents grew frantic. From early morning, they searched Baraboo, the river, fairgrounds, everywhere. No signs of forced entry at home, just the kitchen light left on unusually. They assumed he was at the fair with friends, but worry mounted. By Sunday morning, 24 hours in, they filed a missing person report. Police noted details, but with no evidence, could only advise waiting by the phone. Connie stared out the window, heart aching. Donald regretted not checking neighbors door to door. Back in captivity, Thad awoke to promises of worse punishment for his escape attempt. The assaults intensified, knees slamming into fractured legs. In a moment of talk, Thad asked if he'd done this before. "Yeah," came the reply, nomming Chris Steiner. Rage followed, but Thad focused on survival, his mind sharp. Internal bleeding swelled his legs, death looming. He tricked the abductor, claiming to hear the girlfriend arriving, buying precious seconds. Locked in a closet while she visited, Thad's pain peaked. Digging through junk, he found an old wooden electric guitar. Smashing the door panel, he unlocked it, no hesitation. Repeating the agonizing crawl downstairs, through rooms to the kitchen. The phone cord dangled low. He yanked it down, dialing 911 with buttons at hand. The dispatcher heard a weak voice. "Kidnapped, legs broken, on highway U." Skeptical at first, prank calls weren't uncommon, but the calm desperation convinced her. "Just get me out as soon as you can." Police arrived, calling Thad's name. "In here," he replied. They found him, alive but broken, in the filthy house. Ambulance rushed him to the hospital. Doctors warned he'd have died in hours from bleeding. Reunited with parents, Thad whispered he wasn't the first, nomming Chris Steiner. Flipping through the phone book, they confirmed. That night, police arrested Joseph Clark at a bar, the same suspect from Chris's case. Exhuming Chris's body, X-rays revealed identical fractures, bent bones, twisted beyond accident. Trials loomed. Thad underwent surgeries, determined to testify. At the first, detailing horrors, foot backwards, bones snapped. Joe's defense claimed insanity, memory loss. Thad broke his own bones. But a notebook emerged, lists, get to know, can wait, leg thing, boys' names including Thad's. Guilty of attempted murder, kidnapping, 100 years, for Chris's trial more. But before, neighbor Michael Hughes shot Thad twice, allegedly for Joe. Thad testified anyway. Joe got life without parole plus 100 years, $21 million in restitution. Thad, now in his 40s, limps but thrives with family, crediting their love for survival. In the aftermath of Joseph Clark's arrest, the small town of Baraboo, Wisconsin, found itself grappling with the reality that evil had been living among them, disguised as an ordinary teenager. Clark, just 18 at the time of his capture, was no stranger to the locals, but few could have imagined the depths of his depravity. Born into circumstances that set the stage for tragedy, Clark's early life was marked by instability and whispers of inherited afflictions. Adopted as a young child, his biological mother had reportedly struggled with substance abuse during pregnancy, a factor that his defense team would later highlight in court, suggesting it contributed to his twisted impulses. Growing up in a modest, often chaotic household on the outskirts of town, Clark was known around Baraboo as a brooding figure, taller and stronger than most his age, with a reputation for intimidating younger kids at school. Neighbors recalled him as quiet but unpredictable, someone who kept to himself, wandering the rural roads at odd hours, his eyes often distant, as if lost in dark thoughts. By the time he reached his mid-teens, Clark had already shown signs of trouble. There were incidents at school, fights where he seemed to relish the physical dominance, petty thefts that landed him in minor scrapes with the law. One particularly ominous event occurred the year before Chris Steiner's disappearance, a severe bicycle accident that left Clark with a head injury. Doctors noted possible concussion effects, but Clark brushed it off, returning to his solitary routines. It was around this time that his fascination with bones reportedly intensified. Friends, or rather, acquaintances, as Clark had few true companions, later told investigators about odd conversations where he fixated on the mechanics of the human body, the way limbs could bend and break. He collected medical braces and bandages, stashing them in his room alongside stacks of pristine white socks, items that would later become tools in his gruesome rituals. The house where Clark lived with his family was a far cry from the idyllic homes dotting Baraboo's landscape. Described by police as cluttered and unkempt, it sat on Highway U, a quiet stretch of road flanked by fields and woods. Inside, rooms were piled with debris, old newspapers, discarded food wrappers, and random junk that spoke to neglect. Clark's bedroom upstairs was his domain, a space where he plotted and dreamed. It was here, in this unassuming abode, that he lured his victims, turning a place of supposed safety into a chamber of horrors. When detectives searched the property after Thad's rescue, they uncovered chilling evidence: that school notebook with its meticulously handwritten lists. Get to know included names of boys he observed from afar, perhaps at school or local events. Ken Waite listed those he deemed less immediate targets. And the most damning, leg thing, detailed potential victims for his bone-breaking obsessions, with annotations on their physical builds and vulnerabilities. As the investigation deepened, authorities revisited Chris Steiner's case with fresh eyes. Chris had been a vibrant 14-year-old, full of energy and curiosity. He worked his first job at a local McDonald's, saving up for a new bike, and enjoyed the simple pleasures of small-town life, fishing in the Wisconsin River, hanging out with friends during the summer fairs. His family, George and Kathy Steiner, were pillars of the community, involved in local events and church activities. The night of July 4, 1994 had started ordinarily enough. Fireworks crackled in the sky as Baraboo celebrated Independence Day. Chris went to bed early, his father checking on him around 10 p.m., seeing him tucked under the covers. But by morning he was gone. The open patio door, the cut window screen, the oversized footprints in the mud all pointed to an intruder, but without witnesses, the trail went cold. When Chris's body was discovered 5 days later, floating in the river's gentle currents, the town mourned. The pathologist's initial ruling of accidental drowning seemed plausible at first, perhaps a late-night swim gone wrong amid holiday festivities. But subtle anomalies nagged at investigators: bruises on his limbs, fractures that didn't align with a simple fall into water. Without concrete proof, the case stalled. Now, with Thad's testimony linking Clark directly to Chris, recalling how Clark confessed to the murder during one of his rants, the pieces fell into place. Exhuming Chris's remains was a somber affair, the family reliving their grief as X-rays revealed the telltale bends and snaps in his bones, mirroring Thad's injuries almost identically. It was no accident. Chris had been tortured, his body discarded to cover the crime. Thad Phillips, meanwhile, began his long road to recovery. At the hospital, surgeons worked tirelessly to reconstruct his shattered legs. Multiple operations followed, pins inserted, bones realigned, months of physical therapy ahead. The internal bleeding had been severe, his body pushed to the brink. Yet even in those early days, Thad's spirit shone through. Nurses noted his quiet determination, his refusal to let pain define him. His parents, Connie and Donald, stayed by his side, their home filled with cards and well wishes from a community forever changed. Thad's siblings, too, rallied around him, the family bond strengthening in the face of adversity. As word of Thad's heroism spread, Baraboo united in support. Local fundraisers popped up: bake sales at the Circus Museum, car washes by the high school to help cover medical bills. but the emotional toll was immense. Thad spoke of nightmares, flashes of that filthy house, the sound of bones cracking echoing in his dreams. Counseling sessions helped, but scars lingered. Still, he pushed forward, returning to school with a limp but a smile, determined not to be seen as a victim. "I just wanted to be normal again," he later reflected in interviews, his voice steady despite the memories. Joseph Clark's trial was a spectacle in the otherwise peaceful Sauk County courthouse. Prosecutors, led by Patricia Barrett, built an airtight case. Thad's testimony was pivotal, delivered with remarkable composure for a boy his age. Seated in the witness stand, still recovering from surgeries, he recounted every harrowing detail: the initial abduction, the twists that snapped his ankles, the femur fractures that left him screaming. "My foot was backwards," he said calmly, describing the unnatural angle, the jury gasping in horror. Clark's defense countered with pleas of insanity, citing his prenatal exposure to drugs, the bike accident's potential brain damage. Psychiatric experts testified to dissociative episodes, memory blackouts. Clark himself took the stand, claiming no recall of the events, insisting Thad had injured himself. But the notebook sealed his fate, those lists, scrawled in his handwriting, proving premeditation. In the end, the jury deliberated briefly, finding Clark guilty on all counts for Thad's case: attempted first-degree murder, kidnapping causing great bodily harm. Sentence: 100 years. But Barrett wasn't done. Reopening Chris's case, she pursued murder charges. Before the second trial, tragedy struck again. Michael Hughes, Clark's 15-year-old neighbor and alleged friend, approached Thad's home and fired 2 shots into his back with a hunting rifle. Miraculously, Thad survived, the bullets missing vital organs. Undeterred, he testified once more, his resolve unbreakable. Clark received life without parole for Chris's murder, plus the prior sentence, and a staggering $21 million in restitution to the Phillips family, funds they never fully received, as Clark had no assets. Years passed and Baraboo healed slowly. The Steiner family found closure, though the pain of loss never fully faded. They established a memorial scholarship in Chris's name, awarding it annually to local students excelling in community service. For Thad, life moved on. By his 20s, he had adapted to his physical limitations, the limp a constant but manageable reminder. He pursued education, finding work in fields that allowed him flexibility. Marriage and children followed, his own family becoming his greatest joy. "They keep me going," he shared in a rare interview, emphasizing how fatherhood mirrored the love that saved him. In recent years, as of 2026, Thad remains a private figure, living quietly in Wisconsin. A GoFundMe campaign, organized by community member Olga Johnson, highlights his ongoing needs. Started to provide support since the lawsuit against Clark yielded no compensation, it has raised over $26,000 toward a $100,000 goal. Donors praise Thad as the real hero of Baraboo, his story inspiring resilience. Though details of his current health are sparse, the campaign notes persistent effects from his injuries, chronic pain, mobility issues. But Thad's focus is on positivity, advocating subtly for victim support without dwelling on the past. Joseph Clark, now in his late 40s, serves his sentence at a maximum security prison in Wisconsin. Appeals have come and gone, all denied. Reports from inside describe him as isolated, rarely speaking of his crimes. Psychologists speculate on his pathology, a sadistic paraphilia centered on osteoclases, the breaking of bones, perhaps rooted in childhood traumas or neurological damage. But explanations offer little solace to those affected. The Bonebreaker case stands as a stark reminder of hidden dangers in everyday places. Yet it's Thad's survival that endures, a testament to human endurance. In Baraboo, summers now carry a cautious peace, the river's waters flowing on, whispering stories of loss and triumph. As we wrap this deep dive into one of true crime's most chilling tales, remember to like this video if it gripped you, drop a comment with your thoughts on Thad's incredible strength, and hit that subscribe button for more from Dark Case Desk. where we uncover the shadows without fear. Reflecting on the Bonebreaker case years later, it's clear that the ripples of Joseph Clark's actions extended far beyond the courtroom, shaping the lives of survivors, families, and an entire community in ways that time has only begun to reveal. In the immediate aftermath of the trials, Baraboo tried to reclaim its sense of normalcy, but the scars ran deep. Local schools implemented new safety protocols, with assemblies warning students about stranger danger, even though the perpetrator had been one of their own. Parents hovered closer, curfews tightened, and the annual 4th of July celebrations took on a somber tone, a silent nod to the boy who vanished during that festive weekend. The Wisconsin River, once a playground for fishing and swimming, now evoked whispers of tragedy, its currents a metaphor for how quickly innocence could be swept away. For the Steiner family, the reopened investigation brought a bittersweet resolution. George and Kathy Steiner had spent over a year in limbo, clinging to the official ruling of accidental drowning while their instincts screamed otherwise. When Thad's revelations prompted the exhumation, the X-rays confirmed their worst fears. Chris's bones had been deliberately bent and broken, his death no mishap but a calculated act of cruelty. In interviews following the second trial, Kathy spoke softly about the relief of justice, her voice cracking as she described laying fresh flowers at Chris's grave, now etched with the truth. George, a stoic man by nature, channeled his grief into advocacy, helping establish a local awareness program for child abductions, teaching families the signs they had missed. Their home, once filled with Chris's laughter and the clatter of his bicycle, became a quiet sanctuary, walls adorned with photos of his smiling face, a reminder that his short life had mattered. Thad Phillips's journey post-trial was one of quiet perseverance. Emerging from the hospital after his final surgery, he faced a world eager for his story but unprepared for his humility. Reporters camped outside his family's home, microphones thrust forward, but Thad chose his words carefully, focusing not on the horror but on his gratitude for survival. Physical therapy sessions were grueling, hours spent relearning to walk, his legs braced and aching from the reconstructed bones. Doctors marveled at his progress, attributing it to youthful resilience, but Thad knew it was more. The unwavering support of his parents, Connie and Donald, who turned their living room into a makeshift gym, encouraging every painful step. His siblings, too, played a role, their playful banter a distraction from the limp that would become permanent. As months turned to years, Thad returned to school, navigating hallways with crutches at first, then a cane. Classmates stared, some whispering about the Bonebreaker boy, but others rallied around him, forming a protective circle during recess. Sports, once his passion, baseball cards traded in secret, dreams of playing catcher, adapted to his new reality. He joined the school's chess club instead, finding solace in strategy, a mental escape from physical limitations. High school brought typical teen milestones, first dates, prom nights under twinkling lights, but always with the shadow of trauma. Thad rarely spoke of the ordeal, but in quiet moments with close friends, he admitted the nightmares, echoes of snapping bones, the musty scent of that closet, still haunted him. Adulthood beckoned, and Thad pursued a path grounded in stability. He attended a local community college, studying business administration, drawn to the logic of numbers over the chaos of his past. Jobs followed, entry-level positions in retail, then a managerial role at a hardware store in nearby Sauk City, where his steady demeanor earned him respect. Coworkers knew snippets of his story from news clippings, but Thad deflected questions with a smile, preferring to be seen as reliable rather than remarkable. Romance entered his life in his mid-20s, a gentle courtship with a woman named Sarah. Met at a community event. Their wedding was intimate, held in a Baraboo park overlooking the river, a deliberate choice to reclaim the landscape from fear. Children came soon after, 2 sons and a daughter, filling their home with the joyful noise Thad had fought so hard to return to. Fatherhood transformed Thad, his protective instincts honed by experience. He taught his kids self-defense basics without alarming them, emphasizing awareness over paranoia. Family outings to the circus museum, a Baraboo staple, became traditions, laughter echoing where silence once reigned. Yet the physical toll persisted, chronic pain in his hips, especially on rainy days, requiring occasional pain management. Doctors monitored for long-term complications like arthritis or nerve damage, but Thad managed with quiet determination, refusing to let it define him. In rare public appearances, like a local fundraiser for victim support, he shared glimpses. "I focus on the love around me. That's what got me through." Joseph Clark's existence behind bars offered little in the way of redemption. Incarcerated at Columbia Correctional Institution, a maximum security facility known for housing notorious inmates, Clark adapted to the rigid routine of prison life. Early reports described him as withdrawn, spending hours in his cell sketching. Rumors suggested anatomical drawings, bones prominently featured, though unconfirmed. Interactions with guards were minimal, his demeanor flat, devoid of the rage that defined his crimes. Fellow inmates kept distance, wary of his reputation. Whispers of the Bonebreaker preceded him, ensuring isolation. Psychiatric evaluations continued sporadically, probing the roots of his sadism. Experts noted possible fetal alcohol syndrome from his biological mother's struggles, compounded by the head injury from that bicycle accident. Clark participated sporadically, offering vague insights into his fascination. The control, the auditory thrill of fractures. Therapy sessions aimed at rehabilitation, but progress was negligible. Clark expressed no remorse, viewing his actions as experiments gone awry. Appeals filed in the early 2000s challenged his sentence on grounds of youth and mental health, but courts upheld the life term, citing the premeditated nature evidenced by those notebooks. Over time, Clark's health declined, reports of weight gain, hypertension, the toll of confinement. He worked menial jobs in the prison laundry, earning pennies far from the restitution owed. The $21 million judgment remained a paper victory for the Phillips family. Clark's lack of assets meant no payments materialized. Thad, in interviews, shrugged it off. "It's not about the money. It's about moving forward." Prison records noted occasional disciplinary infractions, minor altercations, hoarding items like socks, but nothing escalating to violence. Clark aged in obscurity, a forgotten monster in a system designed to contain. Michael Huebsch's role in the saga added another layer of darkness. The 15-year-old neighbor, allegedly swayed by loyalty to Clark, approached Thad's home days before the second trial, rifle in hand. 2 shots rang out, bullets piercing Thad's back as he turned. Chaos ensued, neighbors rushing to aid, sirens blaring. Thad collapsed, blood pooling, but fortune spared him. The wounds avoided spine and organs, requiring surgery but no paralysis. Huebsch fled but was apprehended hours later, confessing under interrogation. Motive: resentment over Clark's conviction, a misguided attempt to silence the key witness. Huebsch's trial was swift, charged as a juvenile with attempted murder. Defense argued influence, Clark's manipulation from afar, Huebsch's impressionable age, but evidence of premeditation swayed the judge. Sentenced to a youth facility until 21, followed by probation, Huebsch served his time quietly. Post-release, he vanished from public view, relocating out of state, perhaps seeking anonymity. Speculation lingered. Was he truly a pawn or harbored his own darkness? Thad forgave publicly, stating in court, "I don't want hate to win." The incident delayed proceedings briefly, but Thad's testimony proceeded, his resolve unbroken. Baraboo's evolution in the wake reflected broader societal shifts. The case spotlighted juvenile offenders, prompting discussions on trying teens as adults. Local law enforcement enhanced training for abduction scenarios, emphasizing rapid response to unusual calls, like Thad's composed 911 plea. Community vigils honored Chris and Thad, candles flickering against the night, fostering unity. The Phillips home became a symbol of resilience, neighbors dropping by with meals, offers of help. Donald Phillips, reflecting years later, admitted the guilt of not searching door to door lingered, but pride in his son's strength overshadowed it. Connie Phillips channeled energy into support groups for trauma survivors, hosting meetings in church basements, sharing stories of healing. Thad occasionally attended, his presence inspiring others. As the new millennium dawned, media interest waned, but podcasts and documentaries revived the tale, drawing fresh audiences. Thad cooperated selectively, ensuring accuracy, his voice steady in retellings. By 2010, with kids in tow, life normalized, school events, holidays, the mundane beauty of routine. Into the 2020s, challenges persisted. Economic strains from medical bills prompted community aid. A GoFundMe launched by friend Olga Johnson in 2023 sought $100,000 for ongoing care. Donors flooded in, messages praising Thad's heroism. "You're the real hero of Baraboo." By 2026, funds neared $27,000, a testament to enduring support. Thad expressed thanks humbly, using portions for therapy and adaptive equipment. Clark, meanwhile, filed no further appeals, his case a footnote in legal texts. Prison life ground on visits rare, family distanced. Reflections from former detectives like Kevin Heimerl lauded Thad's impact. He didn't just survive, he ensured no more victims. Baraboo's landscape changed, new developments, but the old house on Highway U demolished, erasing the physical remnant. Thad's family grew, his children unaware at first of the full story, learning piecemeal as they aged. He instilled values of kindness, vigilance, turning pain into purpose. Summers in Baraboo now held picnics by the river, reclaiming joy. As Thad approached 50, his limp a badge of endurance, he looked back with grace. "I chose life over bitterness." The Bonebreaker's shadow faded, but lessons in humanity endured, strength in vulnerability, justice through courage. Baraboo stood taller, a town forged in fire. As the echoes of justice faded in the halls of the Sauk County Courthouse, the true crime saga of the Bonebreaker Killer entered a phase of quiet reflection for those touched by its horror. A time when wounds began to scar over but memories refused to dim. In the years following Joseph Clark's sentencing, the spotlight shifted from the dramatic trials to the everyday battles of healing, where survivors like Thad Phillips navigated a world forever altered by one weekend's brutality. Thad, having testified twice with the poise of someone far beyond his 13 years, returned home to a life that demanded reinvention. His bedroom, once a haven of comic books and sports posters, now held medical charts and therapy schedules, a stark reminder of the physical reconstruction ahead. Mornings started with stretches prescribed by specialists, his legs protesting each movement, the bones knit together but never quite the same. Afternoons brought schoolwork caught up in bursts, his mind sharp despite the distractions of painkillers and follow-up appointments. Connie Phillips, Thad's mother, became the family's anchor, her days a whirlwind of coordinating care. She drove him to physical therapy in Madison, a 40-minute trek through Wisconsin's rolling hills, where therapists pushed him to rebuild strength in his hips and ankles. "One step at a time," they'd say, and Thad would grit his teeth, sweat beading on his forehead, visualizing the freedom of running again. Donald, his father, took on extra shifts at work to cover the mounting bills, surgeries tallying in the tens of thousands, even with community donations pouring in. Evenings were family time, board games around the kitchen table, laughter a deliberate act to drown out the silence of what-ifs. Thad's siblings, protective and playful, teased him gently about his limp, turning it into an inside joke that bonded them closer. By the late 1990s, as Thad entered high school, the town's gaze softened from curiosity to admiration. Baraboo High buzzed with his return, teachers adjusting lesson plans for his needs, peers forming study groups to include him. He excelled in subjects like history and math, his analytical mind a refuge from physical limitations. Extracurriculars adapted, joining the debate team, where his calm under pressure shone, echoing the composure that saved his life. Socially, friendships deepened. A core group of buddies shared lunches, trading stories of weekend adventures. Thad joined cautiously, his cane a constant companion. First crushes bloomed, awkward dances at school events where he swayed slowly, his partner's hand steadying him. These moments, ordinary yet profound, rebuilt his confidence piece by piece. The turn of the millennium brought new milestones. Thad graduated high school with honors, his valedictorian speech touching on perseverance without delving into details, the audience knowing the subtext. College followed at a nearby institution, commuting to save costs, majoring in something practical like accounting. Dorm life wasn't for him. Home's familiarity grounded him amid lectures and exams. Part-time jobs at local businesses honed his skills, stocking shelves at a grocery store, where customers recognized him from old news clips, offering quiet words of encouragement. "You're an inspiration," they'd say, and Thad would nod, redirecting to the task at hand, uncomfortable with the label. Romance solidified in his early 20s. Sarah, a kind-hearted classmate with a laugh that lit rooms, saw beyond the limp to the man within. Their dates started simple, picnics by Devil's Lake, where Thad shared snippets of his story, trusting her with vulnerabilities. Engagement came on a crisp autumn day. Rings slipped on during a hike he conquered despite the ache. The wedding in 2005 was a celebration of triumph, guests from Baraboo filling the venue, toasts raising glasses to resilience. Honeymoon in the Wisconsin Dells, gentle walks along water parks, marked the start of their shared life. Children arrived, transforming priorities. First a son in 2007, his cries filling the house with new purpose. Thad, cradling the infant, vowed protection unlike any he'd known. Diaper changes and midnight feedings tested his mobility, but joy outweighed fatigue. A daughter followed in 2010, her tiny hands gripping his finger, melting away residual fears. Another son in 2013 completed the family, their home a hub of activity, backyard playsets adapted for safety, story times where Thad wove tales of adventure, omitting his own. Parenting brought challenges, coaching Little League from the sidelines, cheering louder to compensate. School events saw him volunteer, helping with fundraisers, his presence a subtle lesson in strength. Professionally, Thad advanced. By his 30s, he secured a stable position in finance at a regional bank, crunching numbers with precision, his desk organized to minimize strain. Colleagues respected his work ethic, promotions coming steadily. Community involvement grew, serving on local boards for youth programs, advocating for accessible facilities without fanfare. Hobbies emerged, fishing on calm weekends, rod in hand by the river that once held tragedy, now a place of peace. Gardening in the backyard, kneeling pads easing the bend, yielded vegetables shared with neighbors. Health hurdles persisted. In his 40s, arthritis flared, requiring joint injections and adjusted routines. Doctors monitored for complications from old fractures, bone density scans, annual rituals. Pain management evolved. Yoga classes tailored for limitations, mindfulness apps to quiet the mind. Thad embraced it stoically, focusing on positives, family vacations to national parks where trails were chosen carefully, memories captured in photos. Joseph Clark's prison existence, in contrast, was one of stagnation. At Columbia, days blurred into monotony, wake-up calls at dawn, meals in the cafeteria under watchful eyes, recreation in fenced yards where he paced alone. Cellmates rotated, but Clark remained aloof, his bulk a deterrent to conflict. Library visits fed a quiet intellect, books on anatomy, perhaps fueling old obsessions, though monitored. Work assignments in the kitchen, scrubbing pots, provided structure. Visits from family dwindled. His adoptive parents aged, distance growing with shame. Letters, if any, were sparse, his handwriting neat but emotionless. Psychological probes continued. Sessions with counselors delved into origins, abandonment issues from adoption, the thrill-seeking that escalated to violence. Clark spoke mechanically, acknowledging acts without empathy, his fascination with bones a detached curiosity. Medication trials for mood stabilization yielded mixed results. Compliance was inconsistent. Incidents dotted his record, arguments over privileges, solitary stints for minor infractions. By the 2010s, health issues surfaced: diabetes from poor diet, managed with prison infirmary care. Appeals exhausted, he settled into permanence, a life sentence lived in increments. The Steiner family's path wound through grief to purpose. Kathy immersed in gardening clubs, her blooms a tribute to Chris's love of outdoors. George volunteered at search and rescue trainings, equipping others with knowledge he wished he'd had. Siblings of Chris, grown with families, gathered annually on his birthday, sharing stories to keep his memory alive. The scholarship fund grew, recipients embodying his spirit, kind, adventurous youth pursuing dreams. Michael Huebsch's post-release life remained enigmatic. After juvenile detention, he relocated to Minnesota, changing names perhaps, seeking reinvention. Rumors of therapy, a low-profile job in construction, but no confirmations. Baraboo whispered of redemption or relapse, but distance muted the noise. Community-wide, Baraboo evolved. Annual memorials at the river park honored victims, lanterns floating at dusk. Safety initiatives flourished: neighborhood watches, school programs on personal boundaries. The demolition of Clark's old house in 2002 cleared the site for a playground, symbolism strong. Tourism leaned into circus heritage, overshadowing dark history. Media revivals kept the story alive. Documentaries in the 2010s interviewed Thad sparingly, his insights profound. Survival is choice, every day. Podcasts dissected psychology, but Thad avoided sensationalism. Books chronicled the case, proceeds aiding victims' funds. Into 2026, Thad thrives. Family dinners buzz with teen chatter, his children excelling in school, sports. Sarah's support unwavering, their bond deepened by trials. Community aid via GoFundMe sustains, donors' messages warming. Your story inspires. Thad gives back quietly, mentoring youth, emphasizing empathy. Clark fades further, prison a tomb of forgotten deeds. Baraboo, resilient, embraces light over shadow. As we conclude this exhaustive exploration of endurance and evil, if this tale captivated you, give it a like, share your reflections in the comments, and subscribe to Dark Case Desk for more unflinching true crime narratives.